Look at me, I'm a painting! So today we got a video from a creationist trying so hard to convince us that the Earth is young. It's a good attempt, I'll say. This is usually the time I make some sort of announcement, but I got nothing this time, so let's just get to the video.
How's it going, guys? Contrary to what we've been told over and over by the mass media and the modern scientific establishment, there are numerous geophysical and astronomical clocks which point to a young age for the Earth, solar system, and the universe. In fact, such young Earth indicators are actually in the majority.
Well, it seems we have different definitions of the word majority here, because that sure doesn't fit the common definition. Perhaps did you mean to say none at all?
But because the scientific establishment and the media are biased against a creator, and because evolution requires an old Earth to appear even plausible, the public at large is rarely told about the mounting evidence that contradicts the belief in an old Earth and the many holes in evolution.
It's difficult when someone claims that everything is just lies or that there's a conspiracy of spreading misinformation, because what can you tell them? The fact of the matter is, scientific information isn't being withheld or controlled in schools. I mean, sure, depending on which school you go to or what classes you take, you could learn different things, but schools aren't actively deciding not to present evidence for a young Earth. Or actually, you know what? They are deciding not to present them, because they don't exist.
Everyone is looking at the same facts. We are looking at the same fossils, we are looking at the same layers of sediment, we are looking at the same radiographic dating of rocks. No one disputes the facts. The difference comes from how these facts are interpreted.
Well, in that case, would you mind telling us how you would interpret the radioactive isotope ratios in fossils? Can you go to tree rings and deduce how old a tree is instead of just giving a general whatever indicates it's younger without presenting an actual number? Creation science is not science. You guys are just trying to poke holes in well-established scientific theories and then saying, look, that proves a young Earth, without doing any of the rigorous analyses that actual scientists have to do. Ridiculous.
Because no one was there to see what happened. We cannot directly observe and measure history. We must look at what we have in the present and follow that evidence to wherever it leads us. And the evidence for a young Earth far outweighs billions of years.
Oh boy, he's so confident. I can't wait to see what he has to present. So he has 5 different pieces of proof here. We're going to power through them.
The oldest living tree on Earth is either an Irish oak or a bristlecone pine. If we assume a growth rate of 1 tree ring per year, then the oldest trees are between 4,500 and 4,800 years old.
Alright, well, I talked about tree ring dating in a previous video, but let's just look at what you said here. The bristlecone pine is 5,067 years old. That's already older than when your supposed flood is. Meanwhile, I don't know why you brought up the Irish oak, since that's far from being one of the oldest organisms on Earth.
It also strongly suggests that something happened around 4,500 to 4,800 years ago, which caused the immediate ancestors of these trees to die off.
Well, no, the bristlecone pine is over 5,000 years old. Don't just keep pushing back the time of when the flood is just to fit in with whatever we observe. Oh, also there are older trees, like the old Tajiko, which is dated to over 9,500 years old. Forget the flood, this tree was present before God created the fucking universe.
Note also that it is possible for trees to produce more than 1 growth ring per year, which would shorten these estimated ages.
Scientists adjust their calculations accordingly. The result of the ages aren't just how many tree rings are present, it's after they factored in and discounted all the fake rings.
The Earth's magnetic field is decaying at a rate of about 5% every 100 years. This means that about 1,450 years ago it was twice as strong as it is today, and 2,900 years ago it was 4 times as strong. Therefore, assuming that the rate of decay has been constant for the recent past, then only 10,000 years ago, the Earth's magnetic field was 128 times as strong as it is today. So strong that the amount of heat produced would have prevented life as we know it from existing on Earth.
This is an argument I've heard before. The magnetic field is decaying, therefore the Earth couldn't be more than 10,000 years old. And there are variations to this argument too. I've heard someone claim that the population growth of humans has been increasing. Therefore humans couldn't have been around for more than 6,000 years because if you follow the same trend, there wouldn't have been humans that long ago. Absolutely ridiculous. These arguments are based on the same idea. They assume the rates have been constant over the years. Modern humans have only been around for a fraction of the time on Earth. We can't use what we observe in the short term to make conclusions in the long term. We have to study study and use scientific evidence to deduce what patterns were present for these phenomena in the past, and this creationist magnetic field decaying hypothesis is no exception. Unfortunately for creationists, the magnetic field has not been decaying at a constant rate. In fact, it has fluctuated and changed multiple times in Earth's history. It goes through cycles of strong and weak, and even reverses in polarity every so often. The magnetic field absolutely cannot be used to estimate or determine the age of Earth whatsoever. There's a reason other methods are used, and they have been quite consistent with each other. Look how simple and brain-dead creationist arguments are. They see a pattern and they make massive assumptions without looking at any of the science behind it.
Carbon-14 is produced when radiation from the sun strikes nitrogen-14 atoms in the Earth's upper atmosphere. The Earth's atmosphere is not yet saturated with C14. This means that the amount of C14 being produced is greater than the amount that it is decaying back to N14. It is estimated that a state of equilibrium would be reached in as little as 30,000 years. Thus, it appears that Earth's atmosphere is less than 30,000 years old. In fact, the evidence suggests it's less than 10,000 years because it has not yet reached equilibrium.
This is interesting. Usually carbon dating is a creationist's nightmare. They hardly use it as a tool to further their arguments. Now, the narrator of this video actually described the argument very poorly, so I'm going to go ahead and reword it for everyone. It goes like this. Creationists state that the atmospheric C14 is currently 1/3 of its way to reaching an equilibrium, which they claim would take 30,000 years total. And since it's 1/3 there, the Earth couldn't be more than 10,000 years old. Now, this is based on a fairly simple observation. The rate of C14 production is greater than its decay, and as more C14 is introduced to the atmosphere, this rate of decay back to nitrogen-14 becomes greater due to the larger sample of nitrogen. It can be seen as a negative feedback loop that keeps the ratio of carbon-14 to nitrogen-14 constant. Creationists are assuming that when the Earth was created, no C14 was present whatsoever. Under these conditions, then one can easily see why the Earth can't be more than 10,000 years old, since we have yet to reach this equilibrium. However, this argument has the exact same flaw as the previous one. It is under the assumption that the production of C14 has remained constant. The decay is constant, with a half-life of about 5,700 years, but the production is not. Think about it. There's a reason we use tree ring dating to calibrate our carbon dating methods. If the carbon-14 amount in the atmosphere was simply constantly increasing, we wouldn't need to do that at all. C14 production is affected by a number of factors, such as changes in sunspot activity and the Earth's varying magnetic field strength, which can alter the amount of cosmic rays that strike atmospheric nitrogen. Looks like this is just another nonsense creationist claim that we can put in the bag full of other debunked creationist ideas.
And also, carbon-14 dating actually provides some of the strongest evidences for creation and a young Earth. Radiocarbon cannot remain naturally in substances for millions of years because it decays relatively rapidly. For this reason, it can only be used to obtain ages in the range of tens of thousands of years.
Yes, radiocarbon dating can only be used to about 50,000 years, but guess what? Tens of thousands of years is still older than your supposed 6,000 years, so I fail to see how this proves a young Earth at all.
Scientists from the RITE project examined diamonds that evolutionists considered to be 1 to 2 billion years old and related to Earth's early history. Diamonds are the hardest known substance and extremely resistant to contamination through chemical exchange. Yet, the RITE scientists discovered significantly detectable levels of radiocarbon in these diamonds, dating them to thousands of years.
Okay, so that claim is simply false and is a variation of another claim that creationists like to make. They like to point out that C14 was found in diamonds, and because of that it couldn't possibly be billions of years old since the carbon-14 sources should have disappeared after 50,000 years. And the answer here is contamination. So I actually addressed this claim almost 2 years ago in a video response to David Reeves. Instead of repeating myself here, I'm going to replay a quick clip from that video to respond to this one. Take it away, past me. Thank you, future me. First of all, there are many ways to contaminate samples. For example, the decay of other radioactive isotopes, such as uranium, can cause a cluster decay and ultimately create carbon-14 from carbon-12 sources. Of course, why do we say contamination now and not when we accurately date other younger things? Good question, but to understand this, you'll have to think critically from a scientific point of view. Allow me to explain. When an item is over 50,000 years old, we can't accurately detect any carbon-14 within the sample. But what happens when you actually try to do so? Well, no matter the age of whatever item we're measuring, we will always get at least some small amounts of carbon-14. Why? Because of contamination. Contamination usually adds very, very little amounts of carbon-14. When we date something within the acceptable age range, this tiny amount usually does not matter. It won't affect the results enough to escape the error range. However, anything older than 50,000 years old will always have some C14 due to this contamination. We are aware of it, so we know we cannot count this detected C14. Did that make sense to everyone? Man, I was such a charm back then. What happened?
The gravitational pull of the moon creates a tidal bulge on Earth that causes the moon to spiral outwards very slowly. Because of this effect, the moon would have been closer to the Earth in the past. If the Earth is only 6,000 years old, there's no problem. But most astronomy books teach that the moon is over 4 billion years old, which poses a major dilemma. Less than 1.5 billion years ago, the moon would have been touching the Earth.
Well, let's do a simple calculation then. The moon is currently receding at about 3.8 centimeters per year, so I'll multiply 3.8 by 4.5 billion years is equal to 17.1 billion centimeters, which translates to 171,000 kilometers. What's the current distance between the Earth and Moon? 384,000 kilometers. Whoops, looks like you fucked up the math a bit, but I know how this argument came to be. A lot of creationists tried to falsely claim that the rate of lunar recession is 3 inches per year. If you do it by that number, then yes, the Earth would have collided with the moon or something. But since we're in the world of science, let's stick to numbers pertaining to reality, shall we? By the way, this is the second thing I need to point out here. I'm sure we all know the reason why lunar recession occurs by now, so I'll just briefly go over it to make my next point. The moon is slowly moving further away due to Earth's rotation pushing the tidal bulges ahead of the moon's orbit, which ultimately accelerates the moon's speed in exchange for slowing down the Earth's rotation. As a result, the moon gradually speeds up faster than what Earth's gravity can hold, causing lunar recession. The current rate is based on the configuration of Earth's water bodies. If you had a single large continent instead of multiple small ones, then the Earth's tidal bulge would have a much lower acceleration force on the moon, and this was indeed the case in the past. During Pangea times, the land was all grouped up together as a supercontinent. This ocean configuration would have been less optimal in staying ahead of the moon's orbit due to Earth's rotation, and thus lunar recession would have been much slower in the past. This brings us back to the point in which creationists always assume that the rates of current events were always constant in the past, when that's simply not the case.
Today the Earth's population doubles every 50 years. If we assume only half of the current growth rate and start with just one couple, it will take less than 4,000 years to achieve today's population.
This is insane. I was literally just making fun of this claim.
A biblical age of the Earth, about 6,000 years, is consistent with the numbers yielded by such a calculation. In contrast, even a conservative evolutionary age of 50,000 years comes out too staggering. Impossibly high figure of 10 to the 99th power, greater than the number of atoms in the universe.
Yeah. You know human growth hasn't been consistent, right? Of course, it would have been much different in the past. You can't just take what you observe today and apply it to the entirety of natural history. That's just not how it works. Anyway, that's just 5 evidence that the Earth is young. Nothing more to see. Go on, close this video and carry on with your life. Beautiful day, isn't it? I mean, at least it is while I'm recording this video. God, this is awkward. Why isn't the outro played yet? Where is it? I can't keep entertaining forever. Oh, okay, wait, I hear the music cue again. Okay, we're good. Bye, guys.